This is the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast with your host, Kevin Murray.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. On this episode, we have an incredible guest who contributes year-round NFL and fantasy football content as a writer and analyst at ESPN. His award-winning projections, player analysis, and innovative stat projections power ESPN's fantasy rankings. And he's the winner of the first ever Scott Fish Bowl. It's the one and only Mike Clay.
Hey, Kev, what's going on, buddy?
How you doing? It's good to see you. It's always been a pleasure seeing you. I met you in Bristol in 2017. I've seen you at FSGA and the Expo, and you've always been so great to me. So it's an honor to have you on here.
Yeah, appreciate you having me on. I don't think we've done this before, so it's fun. It's always fun to catch up with you, and great to be on the show. And it's August, so it's a good time to be talking some ball here.
It is definitely the hype of fantasy football season is here. So when I think of you, the first thing that's coming to mind is a family man, a proud girl dad, and of course NASCAR. Where did your NASCAR passion come from?
Yeah, from my dad, really. When I was a little kid, he was racing on dirt in Pennsylvania. He was actually in 1986 was a track champion at Big Diamond, which was the track that was in my town growing up, Minersville, and then Penn National as well, which most people now know more as the casino, right, in the horse track in Pennsylvania. Obviously, they've grown massively since then, but they used to have a dirt track there that's since defunct. And he won the track championship both years. So he was a racer. I used to go with him all the time. There's tons of pictures of me with him as a little kid with his car. And then it kind of just grew from there. And luckily, I've been able to make friends and go to a lot of races over the years within the sport. Some of my best friends one of my best friends works for a NASCAR team. So, it's been great. It's just it's a fun little side thing. And, football and racing were always my favorite sports growing up. But over the last decade or so, I've become really objective as it pertains to NFL, right? You become more of an analyst and less of a kind of a fanatic, if you will.
Yeah.
Still a fan, but not quite as much as it used to be. I just have to be more objective. So I kind of have to direct some of that just total unreasonable fandom to other sports. And a lot of times that ends up being NASCAR, right? That's what I do to kind of relax and get away from football and other things and just, put the race on. So it's been a nice outlet for that over the years as well.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I love it. So now I imagine growing up in Pennsylvania, you're a big sports fan. How did that lead to you discovering fantasy sports and fantasy football?
Yeah, I mean, my dad introduced me to fantasy football. And when I was a kid, we had a very basic league, and I would use the newspapers and score it. And of course, I'm aging myself now, using the newspapers that you would get during the week to kind of score it manually. We've come a long way since then. But from there, it was just being a sports nerd growing up. I just always had my notebooks and always wrote down stats and just was into it. I would simulate my own seasons, and just as technology came along, I could work that into Excel and programming in high school, stuff like that. So, and then it just continued to grow and grow and grow. And eventually I got an accounting degree, and I did that for a few years, but I was still manually tracking my fantasy leagues and just always loved it. Started my own website and just kind of grew from there. I think everyone that knew me as a kid knew that I had a future in sports, and my career in accounting did not last very long. Of course, I found my way back to sports pretty quickly.
So you created a blog, website, and then that obviously led to starting Pro Football Focus Fantasy in 2010. And then obviously you've created tons of different metrics such as ADOT and more, eventually leading to ESPN. What's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, it's been unbelievable, honestly. It's hard to believe that I was just sitting there one day at my accounting job on a forum. It was actually a NASCAR Nation. It was NASCAR Nation. Dave Norris ran it. And it was just a smaller NASCAR website. And I just made some friends there, was chatting with them. And Daniel Smith was one of them. And we kind of just got this idea, let's just make our own site together, right? We were frustrated. I was frustrated with the projections at the other sites not making sense, right? You'd go to the site and look at projections, and you'd have a quarterback projected for 3,200 yards for the season, but all the receivers total 5,200. And it's this is stupid, right? The projections are awful in this industry. So I just started doing it myself, just from scratch. And now that's kind of what I'm known for, right? I've just improved on that process over the last decade or so. going on 15 years. I can't believe it. How long? I remember when I used to be one of the young guys in the industry and how quickly that has changed. But yeah, that was it. I mean, that was the start of it. And then just kind of worked my way up, built my reputation on social media, and with my content and with my hard work, especially. Eventually discovered PFF, started their fantasy section, and that helped obviously build up things. We had the DFS boom and all that. And then just made some friends along the way. I started doing the projections for a whole bunch of different sites, RT Sports, Yahoo, ESPN, among others, all at the same time for a while there. And then eventually was fortunate enough to land here. So, hard work for sure, but some luck along the way obviously helps, because there's some terrific talent, as you know, in this industry.
Yeah, well, it's been fun to watch your development and rise at ESPN. Everything you're doing there has been amazing. Obviously, expanding different roles here and there. It's been fun, and I've always been a big fan of yours. Obviously, a lot going on at ESPN right now. You got the marathon coming up. What should we expect with the marathon in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I think the very similar dynamic to last year. We'll have our quite a bit of content, including our 4-hour Fantasy Football Now, which is awesome. We just pump in everything into that, from season long to all kinds of fun stuff, including some week one DFS. We're going to be doing some of that. So we have that show, and of course we wrap it up as always with the draft, which is a lot of fun. We had a blast with that last year. Not sure if Tyler Fulgham's going to come back this year. We'll see. He might be a little scared after what went down last year when I kind of tore his team to shreds, although he did end up with some good picks. So, some good, some bad. But, yeah, we had a lot of fun with that last year. We're going to do that again, of course, and I'm really looking forward to that. But, yeah, the marathon's going to be great. We're going to have the whole team in, Eric Moody, Liz Loza are coming into town. I know we have some other NFL talent, including Adam Schefter, among others, that are going to be involved with it as well. So we're getting really excited.
That's awesome. Now, when it comes to fantasy, obviously there's a lot of different things to love about it. What do you love the most about the game?
Yeah, I think it's just because it itches that scratch of just being a sports nerd, just loving it, and kind of the feel of managing your own team, something we all dreamed of, all sports nerds like you and myself. Growing up, we wanted to manage a team. We kind of dreamed of playing sports, but also, being a coach or a GM or whatever it may be of sports teams. And, I have always had to kind of scratch that itch growing up, whether it was simulating seasons on Madden or NHL or NBA or whatever it might be, and fantasy obviously does that as well. So I think it's that. It's just, we live busy lives and we're stressed out, and we have kids and families and work and all those things. So for me, yes, it's a job, and sometimes it very much feels like a job. But also sometimes I can just relax and take a deep breath and say, this is kind of my happy place, like sitting here adjusting my teams, doing waivers, doing projection updates, whatever it may be. So that's really it for me. It's just that feel of, really managing a team, and it's an escape as well, because my hobby has turned into my job, and I don't really need to remind myself of that, because I really do have a passion for it. And that's, I think, why I've really had success in the industry, right? Like growing up, people say you can be whatever you want when you grow up, and you really can, but you have to put the effort in too, right? Like I couldn't just say, well, I love fantasy football and I'm good at it, so I'm just going to coast to ESPN. You actually have to put in the work to be good at it. And I think the marriage of all those things, the passion, the hard work, has led me to where I am today.
Yeah, and that obviously kind of ties in with recommendations you might have for aspiring fantasy sports analysts.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple rapid fire questions here. Name a person in the fantasy industry that you would want to watch a football game with, just to get their insight and perspective on the game.
Somebody in the industry.
Yeah.
Other than Kevin Murray, you're saying?
Yeah. We'd have a good time. I know that.
Man, that's a good question. So many great friends. I think back to the early days of Twitter too, and think about, I used to clash a lot with Sigmund Bloom, and we had a lot of fun with that. Him and I, again, are in the early days of fantasy football Twitter. He has kind of a different outlook than I do, right? Where I'm a little bit more on the analytical side, and it's a numbers game. He's a little bit more of like, I just have a feel on this guy, I'm going to go for it, and it works, right? I think we both have shown are successful. We both win a lot in our leagues, and him and I have always we clashed a lot in the early days when we were younger. A little bit more of a professional relationship now as we've grown, but it's still in a lot of leagues together, and they're always very competitive. So I would say Sigmund, just going on the thinking back to the early days, would be a good one. But there's quite a few. I mean, again, so many great friends in this industry, and I could list on and on and on. Those kind of people. So I'll give the nod to my old friend Sigmund. Yeah.
That's good. No, yeah, there are so many cool people, great people in the industry. Tell me, speaking of that, I mean, tell me about those early years of the Scott Fish Bowl. I know that you were the original champion. It was the FF Oasis. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, that's what it was. And I mean, look, I know there's more people in it, but it was hardest back in year one. It was the most competitive field of all time, and no one will ever be able to overtake me as the best in league history. No, yeah, obviously it was much smaller, much different back then. I think that Scott actually kind of hates me a little bit because he's the nicest guy in the world, but he definitely hates me a little bit because he had a very good team in that league, and him and I played for the title, and I beat him, and it was close, and he has not forgiven me for that. I think he just has always wanted to be the original champ of that league, but. Yeah, I think it was like 96 teams or something back then. It was tiny,
Wow.
but it's cool to always hold that designation, if you will, that honor of what has turned into the biggest tournament in the industry, and it makes so much money for charity. It's great, if you're watching this and you can get involved, whether it's just helping support it or playing in it, whatever it might be, you absolutely should do that.
Yeah. Now, what's your most memorable home fantasy football league experience?
Yeah, I've probably quite a few. I think my 16 team free dynasty league I've been running for a long time. We just cut down from 16 to 14 teams this year, but entering year 17, I believe. I couldn't believe it. Just hard to believe. And I have an almost identical league that's we have everybody throws a couple bucks into that's running parallel to it too. That's about the same length. I think it's like 1 year younger. So probably quite a few memories of them. One of them I actually just wrote about in the playbook. That I write the playbook every week of the season, but I do like kind of a big one, a comprehensive one for the whole season. Just went up at ESPN.com. It's free to check out. It's a long one, but it's a lot of good stuff in there. And I tell a lot of stories about some of my leagues to kind of use as examples. And one of my favorites is my brother. And again, all the details are in there, but my brother he was very young at the time. This is going way back. It was 07. It was 07. So he was, man, I don't even know how old was he, like 12 or something. And that was the year, remember, the Patriots had their amazing season, right? It was like the Welker Brady year. I forget who else was. I know they're like Randy Moss was like, I think it was like Moss, Welker, Brady. He also loved the Patriots, so he had them. He likes the Vikings, so he had Adrian Peterson. He likes Miami Hurricanes, so he had Kellen Winslow. So he didn't know anything. He was just a little kid, but basically he drafted all those players because he liked them. It was the perfect storm of a team, like one of the best teams you could possibly draft in fantasy football history. And here's the thing: he was so young that he had his week one lineup and just never touched it the entire season. He went I think he lost 1 week. It was the bye week for New England. I think Peterson was off that week too, and he scored like 17 points that week and lost, and then he just got smoked in the playoffs like immediately.
Yeah.
So I told that story to talk about like how you could draft the best team of all time, but you still have to work waivers and check your team.
Yeah.
Like you have to stay on top of it if you want to win a championship. And that same year, I started 0-6 and won that league. By just making trades and working waivers. So that's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, that's a great lesson for sure. Now, obviously, fantasy leagues are fun. Last place punishments are fun. You've currently got a colleague named Kevin that's just flew all over the country as a punishment. Have you been tracking that?
Yeah. That's Kevin Pulsifer, one of our researchers. He's been a big help he's done great work on FF now for many years. And he's had to explain himself a little bit because it kind of looks bad that he's last, but I guess it's like a dynasty rebuild he's doing. So we've all been there. He finished last. So kind of a ridiculous punishment. I don't think I would ever agree to that. Honestly, I don't, he just, it's like 2.5 days. He's flying around the country on these flights and the league all chipped in to pay for it. That's brutal. I don't like flights. Extreme. I don't like layovers. I don't like any of that stuff. So I don't even think I would join that league.
Well, hats off to him. Yeah, I mean, geez, what That league. You gotta ask some questions about that league. But when it comes to actual football, can you name a quarterback, a couple of running backs, receivers, a tight end that you don't want to leave drafts without this year?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's all, certainly value based, looking at ADP. I think quarterback, I'm Lamar Jackson's, the hype's starting to build. Like, I thought there was a tier there with Joe Burrow where he was interesting. I think the guy that kind of stands out is probably Deshaun Watson, some post type appeal there. The last full season he played, he led the NFL in passing yards. He runs a lot, better team around him. So I think he's a good value target. Rachaad White is probably my favorite running back target right now in Tampa Bay. His ADP has jumped up a couple of rounds recently. He was like 7th round a couple weeks ago, and now he's more like the 5th. So that's unfortunate because he was a massive steal and looks good. I think those are two guys that have really jumped out. I have to think Christian Watson at wide receiver would be one for sure. He was so good down the stretch. I know it was very touchdown heavy, but there's just not really competition there. I mean, no proven commodities behind him, and I think he's the real deal. They traded a lot to move up to get him last year, so I like him a lot. And probably a little post type appeal for me with Kyle Pitts. I'm still buying in on that talent, man. It's easy to forget the guy was over 1,000 yards as a 20-year-old rookie tight end, and that is a position that takes a while to develop. So I know last year's a bust, but I'm still buying the hype on him. I feel good anytime I pick Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, it's a good assessment. Those are all players that you can get if you want to go target them for sure. So well, obviously it is August. It is fantasy football season. Things are ramping up. So excited to see everything you have going on this year. Where are you going to be? Where are we going to find you?
Yeah, so everything will be, of course, at ESPN.com, ESPN Plus, or some free stuff, some plus stuff. Fantasy Focus podcast a few times a week. Be doing some betting content, the playbook, the Shadow Report, Fantasy Football Now every Sunday morning, starting with the season. And as you mentioned, we have the marathon coming up as well, so that's going to be a lot of fun.
All of that, yeah. Definitely make sure that you are following Mike and getting every ounce of content that he puts out there, because it's as good as it gets in the industry for sure. Now, Mike, is there anything we haven't covered before we close things out here today?
I don't think so. Covered a lot of stuff there, but of course, so much content. Everything's covered in all my content over at the site too. So wondering about a player, I wrote all the player capsules this year for us, so they're on the projections page on the site, and tons of articles. Our magazine's on newsstands as well. So if you're looking for fantasy football content, we've it covered at ESPN Fantasy for sure. Just a great team effort right now, and just love being part of this team.
That's awesome. Good stuff, Mike. Great to see you. Great to talk to you, and look forward to seeing everything you got in store in 2023.
All right, you got it. Take care, buddy.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Football Unlimited podcast. Until next time, be sure to follow and subscribe to all of FFU's social media accounts for daily content.